Welcome to the Natural Health Podcast, where we bring awareness of sustainable health in the business hustle space. Natural Health Podcast is perfect for the high-performing, business-minded individuals who want to work with their biochemistry to achieve success and optimal health. It's Friday, which means it's time for friends sharing facts about health, business, and overall success. In today's episode, we talk to Jade Plunkett. Jade is an Ayurvedic lifestyle consultant, yoga practitioner and teacher, as well as a Reiki healer and intuitive. She's passionate about helping heart-centered leaders move through anxiety so they can lead a life they love and deserve. Some interesting facts about Jade is that she absolutely loves rock climbing. She loves it so much that she actually ended up having a serious rock climbing accident that put her in ICU for 10 days and ended up having a blood clot on her brain, head surgery, 2 shoulder surgeries later, and she's still rock climbing today. And she's also hiked Everest Base Camp. Welcome to the Natural Health Podcast, Jade.
Hi, thank you so much, Mahela, for having me.
So rock climbing, you love it so much?
Yeah, I do actually. I really, really do. And people have often questioned me that if I've suffered anxiety, why? And I get so much more mental space when I'm climbing because it's really just the fittest of the survival. So for me, it's a bit more of it's a real thrill for me. Yeah, love it.
I love it. I love it. And you've done Everest Base Camp. That is my dream. I've always said, I don't mind. I'm not going to be climbing it, but I'm happy to get to the base camp. How was that? Tell me a bit more about that.
That was amazing. Honestly, I felt like it wasn't even just a matter of going to Everest Base Camp. Whilst that's on a lot of people's bucket list and I get that, it was just about being in the Himalayas. Like, it's just such a beautiful space to be in that even if you just go there to go to one of the villages and you don't do the big hike, just get there and see the culture and how different it is. It's just amazing.
I can just imagine just waking up and seeing the Himalayas. Wow, that's just breathtaking. That's like my dream.
It's just amazing. And sometimes you'd wake up and because there's little temples and stuff, so you could hear them chanting. And just the whole place with the flags and the people and like the Nepalese are just such a beautiful, kind, natured community of people. So yeah, amazing. I definitely want to go back. I'll do different treks. Himalayas are just gorgeous and just recommend people just to get there.
100%. I love it. So let's get to know Jade a little bit more. I know we've spoken about rock climbing and the accident and what you love, but let's find out a little bit more about Jade. What have been your key turning points in your life journey to get you where you are now and what you're doing right now?
Definitely the anxiety that I mentioned earlier. So for me, I actually had a long-term relationship breakup when I was 29. So for those that are familiar with the return of Saturn, definitely what happened there for me. Yeah, and so
good old Saturn return.
I know. And
gets us every time.
Yeah, and we have 2 to 3 of them depending on how long we live, right? So I'm prepared for the next one. I'm so prepared. But yeah, so that happened. And I was already going through a few little mental health issues at the time, but my partner and I didn't understand what was going on with me. And so I became an absolute wreck. As people will know, anyone that's experienced anxiety, just panic disorders and hyperventilation, and just you can go from hyperactivity to not wanting to do anything at all and just wanting to be in bed. And I remember one day I was on the lounge just crying for 4 hours, not knowing why. So that has been a big trigger for me. And I spent a long time trying to find something to fix myself, and so I'm super resilient and always have been, very determined. And I was just like, this isn't good enough. And so I did things like kinesiology and psychology, mental health plans, went and saw psychics. And I went to India to get my yoga teacher training. You mentioned I am a practitioner. And so I was in Rishikesh and they were talking about Ayurveda. And I was like, what is this Ayurveda? And I came back to Australia because I was just so passionate about finding a key to mental health that is sustainable, that can actually work. And so I started a yoga therapy course, and in there was an Ayurvedic lady or consultant, and she and I did a consultation, a few together, and just everything changed. Just everything changed, particularly after 5 years of just fighting with this anxiety, really fighting against it. And I have a Facebook group which is actually called Embrace Anxiety, because it's actually all about embracing it and understanding it a lot better. And so through that journey, that's what I've been able to do, is actually build a relationship with the anxiety. So I still get it every so often, but it's not debilitating. It's absolutely not debilitating. So yeah, and it's been just a really beautiful journey for me to now unmask myself, because that anxiety was covering up so many issues that were sabotaging in my, relationships, not just intimate ones, but my friendships too, and professional relationships. So it's been a really beautiful journey of like creating a separation of identity and not feeling as though I am, what's the word that I want, that I'm indulging in the emotions or believing that they're my true identity. So it's been really magical, I have to say.
Wow. Unmask yourself. That in itself is so beautiful, because like you said, anxiety helps you puts a mask on you, so you're not even yourself, and it hinders so many parts of your life. You said relationship, your everyday life, your health. But I love the thing about you is you actually went and discovered, and you're like, what can help? Like, I've tried this and I've tried that. How can I actually get to the root cause of my anxiety? I love that. So you worked with a practitioner to assist you with that?
I did. So she originally she just put me on a program, and the original thing was for me to go and see her after a month. And I still did, and I still caught up with her a couple of times thereafter. But the program she put me on was enough for me to be able to create that space. So it was, it was, I remember I just couldn't believe that that's where I was living after living with anxiety for so long. I remember within about 3 or 4 weeks, I still laugh now, that I woke myself up several times during the night because I was laughing in my dreams. There's just been so much change in my neural pathways that, it just, I don't know, it's so profound. So profound.
That's mind-blowing. Your body knew it was laughing the anxiety away.
I like that. I like that, yeah.
I love that. So now, what do you see as optimal health and optimal success for you now? Because I guess Jade, so many years ago, would have been different to what it is now.
Well, I think success is really subjective. And for me, I find that I'm now on my path, and that's success for me. And as I said, I'm not perfect. I still have my days. When I say days, like it's an hour here and there, and I know how to actually work through it. But I struggled for 5 years. And so my path is now to support people who are going through a similar journey and supporting them so that it doesn't take them 5 years. And that's my path. And in terms of optimal health, it's awareness for me. It's just simply awareness. It's, when I get that rattle in my body, I'm like, okay, why are you there? Or not even question it, just like register that it's there, take a couple of deep breaths, maybe go for a little bit of a walk, whatever it might be, or rest in Shavasana. I've got my tools. And then I'll journal about it later, which is another way, like another thing that I do, but it's really important for anxiety. So yeah, there's the two, isn't it? So I'm on my path, and I'm super excited to be here and to have gotten myself through this journey, and to now share it with others, and to share that awareness with others as well, so that they're no longer creating that separation, which is where the suffering begins.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you've been through that. So when someone comes and sees you or talks to you, you can actually listen with your heart, and you can actually listen and understand what is actually happening, not just the science behind it. You actually understand because you've been there yourself, and you can actually emphasize with them and assist them through the journey. I love when people have been through that and then they help others. So good on you for moving forward and doing that. So look, let's talk about today's topic. I'm so excited about it. The importance of routine to reduce your anxiety. And everyone's like, what? Routine and anxiety? That goes together in one sentence. Usually routine gives some people anxiety. So there's a saying that the secret of your future is hidden in your daily routines. So even before we get into talking about anxiety and routine, are you able to just give us a little bit of a background of what actually anxiety is? Because I guess it can be different for person A to person B, and they might be like, well, that person's got anxiety. My anxiety doesn't look anything like that, so therefore I don't have it. Are you able to give us a little bit of an insight?
Yeah, I think that there's definitely two folds to this. In terms of anxiety on a very basic level, the way that we see it from an Ayurvedic perspective is that it's a collective of unprocessed thoughts. And so the best way to, if we think about a computer, and our brain's the same, it just stores data. And when we're not processing those thoughts, the brain's going to crash. And so the same thing happens with our computer. If we don't, for the lack of a better word, if we don't back up the software, then the computer's going to crash. And so it's just that constant cycle. And those unprocessed thoughts are a collection of everything over our lifetime and potentially even past lives, if people believe in that, and I definitely do. We have karmic impressions. So for me, it's all about so what we see people doing today is like when things get a little bit stressed and too much, we'll go and have a coffee, or we'll do this and we'll take maybe some medicine, and we're not actually dealing with the problem. So the way is to actually allow the thoughts to be processed, and that may mean the need to actually go back into your younger years, and that's definitely been work that I've done, inner child work, that I've been able to do post the Ayurvedic work that I do. And I still live an Ayurvedic life, but when there is trauma involved as well, it's about moving through those thoughts and no longer becoming attached to those thoughts and letting them go, because the anxiety at the end of the day is really just like a scared little child that doesn't want to let go. And it's about us really nurturing that and processing our thoughts so that we can create space in the mind, which is things that we get taught, isn't it, around yoga and meditation. They all provide us with that space. That's why I like rock climbing. So it's really just a collection of unprocessed thoughts. And the other fold of that was that anxiety is often just, how do I explain this? In the sense that if you're feeling anxiety, the question is, what is it that you're not feeling? So it's also seen as an event. Yeah.
Like that. That's pretty deep. What is it that you're not feeling?
Yeah. And that's a big one for me.
Or even the first one, you said us processing our thoughts. I mean, most of us don't want to deal with the things that's happening in our head, and that's what we do. We push it away. We have the alcohol, we have the pizza, we have the ice cream, we have the mates, we have things that we don't deal with what is happening. And therefore, like you said, the anxiety just creeps up and can look different to other people. Some people might be in a tag, some people might be sweating, some people might be losing weight, some people might not be sleeping well. I love that.
Yeah.
I love the thing about unprocessed thoughts. I really can resonate with that, and the audience can resonate with that too, I bet you, because there's so many thoughts that they've pushed aside under the carpet, as we would say.
Yeah, that's right. Sweeping under the carpet. Yeah. Yeah,
that's crazy. So how are anxiety and routine interlinked? I know it seems crazy, like I said at the start, for us to be talking about anxiety and having a routine in the same sentence. So what is their whole, how are they linked together?
So from an Ayurvedic perspective, the way that we look at a person is we look to the elements, so the laws of nature. And so with every, I don't know if you know, but there are doshas, which is the Vata, Pitta, Kapha. And so with every dosha, there are like key elements. So for Vata, it's the ether and air. For the Pitta, it's fire and water. And then for the Kapha, it's water and earth. And so often will be the Vata, where the anxiety is flaring up. And so the key element in that is actually air. So, which is responsible for many things, particularly our respiratory system, or we call it prana, life force. And so if you imagine air, exactly what does that do? It moves. So we have this abundance of movement that's happening in the body, and it's not just on our physical level, but also in the mind. That's why the mind is always racing, always going. We're worrying a lot, thinking about the future. And so because we have that irregularity, which, as I said, also includes other things like could be eating. So you're not eating every single meal that you should be. Perhaps you're missing meals. you're not sleeping very well, your breath is quite poor or short, the mind, the environment as well. So if it's autumn, that's a very aggravating month for Vata because there is high winds and it's quite a dry month. So because of the movement that is attached to anxiety through the Vata, through the elements, we need to actually create stability. We need to create stability in a person's life. And so that's why routine is so important in grounding a person. It provides them with consistency, regularity. They know what's coming. They don't need to worry. And it's just about all of that, just that grounding element. So because as I said, you've got, the ether and the air, and then below that you have, at the bottom of that is the earth and the water. So it's about bringing that balance between the two. And routine does that.
I love how you explain that. And I love even looking at what came to me as you were explaining that was an image of like the wind and the trees just going all over the place. And if they didn't have the roots, they wouldn't be able to stand or else they'll fall and break, right? It's kind of like that's how we can look at ourselves. That's what came to my mind when you were explaining that.
Yeah, beautiful. And I love that, actually. I've not imagined it in that way. I definitely look to the trees because obviously that's when we know that there are high winds. That's a true indicator. But that's a really beautiful analogy. I love that.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because I myself, and I know a lot of other individuals, that when it is really windy outside, I'm all over the place. I always say my energy, my body is just all over the place. I'm not going outside. I'm staying inside today.
Yeah, and it's really, really true. And so it's understanding what dosha you may be dominant in and where you may be imbalanced, and then having a look to the season as well. So I know that it's been lately because of the rains that we've had, I've been waking up and not wanting to get out of bed, and that's not really like me. I'm an early riser and I'm up and going. And then, I look outside and it's been raining overnight. And I was like, that's because it's the rain, it's the water, it's the grounding, it's the cementation, if that's a word. So it's just like, oh, okay, you know what? And because I have that awareness, I just give myself that grace. I give myself that self-care and go, yeah, that's fine. I got up a little bit later today. It's fine.
How amazing is that? And you're gentle on yourself, right? Instead of the usual, I'm guessing, old Jade or people that are listening, they're like, oh, why am I not already working? Why am I in bed? Why haven't I been up? And why haven't I done 1, 2, 3, 4? I've got such a big to-do list. And then you're just creating stress for yourself, right?
Yeah, unnecessarily, definitely. Because I'm on my mat by about 6 a.m. each morning. And so if I'm not on my mat at 6 a.m., I'm like, yeah, it's okay. I'll get there.
Yeah. How beautiful is that? That's absolutely amazing. So I guess the way that the routine comes into play with anxiety is what you said exactly, because Vata is such a sign of like instability and things like that. You need the stability, you need the routine, the grounding. Is that right?
Yeah, the rooting in. Yeah, you definitely do. Because there's a lot of things that come with it. You can be somebody who talks at really fast pace, which I think I still do at times.
That's so me. I need to slow down.
Hyperactivity as well. And this is all just because you're just trying to like go. And I see people now, and I can imagine that that's what I must have been like. It's so beautiful when you have mirrors around you now and you can just take that step back as well, and you not get so frustrated and annoyed with the person in front of you because you're like, oh, they're going through their journey. So, yeah, but those mirrors are really beautiful and you're like, wow, I've come such a long way and still a long way to go.
Yeah, I like that you see them as mirrors. Sometimes you're like, oh my God, I can't deal. But then you're like, okay, they're mirrors. It just changes the mindset. I love that. That's absolutely amazing. So you've educated, because you do Ayurveda medicine, Ayurveda and yoga, and you've said a little bit of how it sees anxiety. It sees it in regards to the dosha of Vata. What do they say it is the key to, I guess, overcoming it, overcoming this anxiety in regards to your field?
Yeah, there are many things that we would recommend for somebody, and it also depends on where they're at in life, because if you're somebody who is really debilitated in anxiety, we can't get you to the optimal routines that would be required. Everything needs to be done in small steps, because as well, particularly somebody with the Vata dosha, you just want to get there now. you want to get there yesterday. And so you give them all these tasks and then they become overwhelmed, and then they'll want to give up, or it's all too much. It increases their anxiety. So it's all about understanding where the person is at first and foremost. But again, the most important thing will always be grounding. And it's about just trying to create more of that ease and flow in the physical self, because we know that the body and the mind is connected, and the more that we can create calm in each parts of our body, then overall we'll have more of a calm perspective. And so things that we do that would be telling them to focus on their breath. So we recommend, because there is shortness of breath that happens, we would actually recommend that they take 10 to 15 deep belly breaths at least 3 times a day, at least, just to try and release some of that vibration, that rattle that may be happening in their body. Because what happens is that there will be a slight contraction of the muscles, because, as I said, fascia is responsible for movement. So there will be that slight contraction. And as that's happening, it's actually taking the oxygen from the body through the muscles out of the skin, because it's the closest organ to the muscles, and we become depleted of oxygen. So it's really important that we get them to be breathing. It's just so, so, so important. And then other things would be through food, which is a huge part in Ayurveda, and going to the sweet taste, which I'm so grateful for because I love sweet food, but of course it needs to be the right sweet food. So, incorporating grains that are sweet, having milk, ghee. Ghee is such a beautiful oil, if you could call it that, for all of the doshas. It has just so many medicinal benefits to it as well. And then also just avoiding foods that are dry and light, because, as I said, autumn, dry and light. So we don't want to be aggravating it any further. We really need nourishing food on a daily basis, warm, cooked, nourishing food. And then we do have some little Ayurvedic ways as well that people may not like. So one is called Nasya. So they're nasal drops, and you do them every morning. So just 3 in each nostril, and you just have a bit of a rub around the sinuses. And the reason we do that is because of the pituitary and the pineal glands. And because it's all part of the endocrine system, it's associated with our adrenal glands, hence why we're in fight or flight mode. So by doing that, actually lubricates, again, because there's dryness in the body, we're lubricating those glands and also the mind.
What oil is that?
So you can get a medicated oil, but just for somebody who just wants to do it, because it's actually fantastic for all of the doshas, is actually just, what's it called? Cold pressed black sesame oil. And you can, it's not one that you buy in the supermarket. So it's not the black sesame oil that you use to make a beautiful, I don't want to say ramen or something like that. But it would be something that you'd get from an Ayurvedic store or a health store. But I love it. I've been doing it now every single day for 6 months. I was a little bit adverse to it for a little while, but no, now I love it. And
it's just the oil that goes up the nostrils, both nostrils.
Yeah, up each of the nostrils, and you just lay down when you do it, or you can just tilt your head back. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is Abhyanga, which is a self-massage. And the reason is because somebody who is of a Vata constitution, they will actually generally have poor circulation. So we have generally cold hands and feet. Again, so it's all to do with the endocrine system, the circulatory system, so movement, but we're not getting enough of the blood flow to our extremities. So we actually would use a self-massage to actually give ourselves more oil as well on the skin, which will again go into each of our joints, which can prevent things like arthritis or osteoporosis in the future.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And the drying effect definitely rings a bell, because when you're anxious, you're using up so many minerals, so many vitamins, and it makes total sense why we would be dry, right? Dry mouth, dry skin, dry hair. It's all linked to, I'm guessing, in your sense, the Vata or an anxious individual. Yeah. So that was an amazing how you explained that. Absolutely love that. But my question is, can Kapha and the other one is, so you've got Vata, Kapha and Pitta. Can Kapha and Pitta be anxious?
Definitely Pitta. Like, so if you're Pitta dominant, then probably, when I say dominant, because I'm actually Pitta dominant, I'm Pitta Vata. And
you can be two.
You can be two, yes. And you can be tridoshic, but there's actually not many people who are. And I think generally you will find more dual people than just an independent dosha. So for example, everyone has, and just to make it clear, everyone has every dosha. So it's not that you're without, because we need each of the doshas. They all are responsible for something. So, Vata is responsible for movement. Pitta is responsible for transformation. So when we eat our food, that it'll actually transform and become part of us. And then when I say Kapha is responsible for growth. So things like, our nails, our hair, our body, our bones, like everything's growing, our tissues, all of that. So we need every single one of them. You couldn't survive without one of them. So in terms of can they be anxious? Look, again, anxiety is also something that can be situational. So it also depends on your environment. So I have a friend actually who she is Kapha Vata, and she'd never experienced anxiety in her life. Never. So she never understood what I'd been through, even though she was there for me 24/7. She would always be there, but she just didn't understand. And then having her first child, anxiety through the roof. And she doesn't have it anymore. She's definitely got signs of things where she's like worries a little bit because she's now a mum. So it is possible. It is possible. Again, it just depends on how much you have of each of the doshas. Because again, I know someone who is also Pitta Vata, but they are probably 80% Pitta, whereas I'm probably like 50% Pitta. Do you know what I mean? So it's a combination, definitely a combination. So I think anybody can experience it at least once in their life.
That's so interesting. I love listening to people talk about Pitta, Vata, Kapha, and all those things. And I know that, if the audience is interested, I know that there are quizzes online. How do you recommend them, or is that something that you can kind of find out, like if you're not working with a practitioner?
Look, I think that you can definitely do the Dosha Quiz. I have one on my website. Yeah. So I think that definitely just have a look and see what you are, right? And look at the questions that they're asking too, and have a look and say, oh, actually, I didn't really think about that. Because I can generally meet someone after meeting them after a period of time. I'm like, oh, okay, I think they're dominant in this, and then I start to see some behaviours, and I'm like, oh, okay, like that's them, and that's okay. We're all independent individual, and it just allows you to, I think, just see through a different lens and really become accepting of everybody.
Yeah. And you said it's dependable. So even me hearing you talk about the doshas, it clicks in my mind how during maybe the ages of 0 to 5, you have a different dominant dosha. And then from 5 till 10, you'll be different dominant. And then teenagers, you'll be dominant something else. And then later in life, you'll be dominant something else. It's kind of like a transformational thing, isn't it?
Well, it's interesting you talk about that, because I was going to mention something earlier, but I was like, I'm getting into it a bit too much. But we do have, there are actually life periods, I guess you could say, in which each dosha is dominant. So when we think about growth, when are we growing? We're growing from the time that we're born until we're an early adult. So that's our Kapha stage. And that's why you'll see children have a lot more sinus issues, things around water, congestion, asthma even, or bronchitis or whooping cough. Like, these are all signs of Kapha. And this is when there's an imbalance. So, and often I think some children can be born, with light hair and blue eyes, which I think is generally Kapha as well. And then those can actually change.
Yes.
And then from an early adult up until 50 is when you're in your Pitta. And the reason that you're in your Pitta is it's all about fire. It's all about transformation. You're transforming from being a young person, becoming an adult, and you're transforming this part of your life before you go into your older years. And so it's all about, people who are Pitta dominant are like ambitious, goal orientated, all just striving to do more, be better, make their mark in the world, very determined people. And so this is when we grow in this space, because we're becoming leaders in our, whether it's in our education or in our business or in our family. That's why, I support heart-centered leaders, because we're all leaders in our own lives. And so once we move through this phase, we then move into the Vata stage, which is, we do get a little bit older and our bones are starting to break down, and we've got osteoporosis and we're becoming a little bit more drier. The skin is sagging a little bit, and, unfortunately, gravity is actually doing the work we don't want it to be doing. But yeah, so it's all about, those three journeys. And so we actually do see them happen through our lifetime.
Yeah, that is such an amazing explanation of how we don't just stay who we are. We're always transforming and things are always changing. And we, sometimes we think, back in the days I would have done this and this. And that's okay, because we need to change. We need to transform. And so does our anxiety. Our anxiety 5 years ago may have looked different compared to what it may look like now. It may be less, it may be more, and so forth. So in regards to routine, so did you feel that routine helped you with your anxiety? And what does that look like? So when we say to someone, get a routine, it'll help your anxiety, they're probably like, what does that mean? Go into more detail.
Well, routine as well. I love it. I love the routine that I have, but I'm also quite flexible with the routine. There's a few things that I must do. And there's things that I'm like, well, if I don't do it today, it's okay. And so around the routine, it's something that for me has, as I said, just helps to ground me. And I think that, if people are thinking, routine, like it's boring, I don't want to do it. It's actually, for me, I love it because I know exactly what I'm doing and when I'm doing it. And because I am Vata mentally, then I find that I can just fly. My thoughts will just fly. So for me, having a routine, I know exactly what I'm doing and when I'm doing it. But again, the routine is just, it's very individual. So for what I do compared to what somebody else does, it's going to be very different, but it's just about creating that stability and that knowingness. And I think anybody that says, that they don't want to have a routine and that is just not for me, I actually think it's just that's more of a fear-based thing. And I don't want to paint a brush over it, but we fear what we don't know. And if you're experiencing anxiety on a daily basis, it's because that the ego has become so attached to this normal. And so it would rather be stuck in the shadow than have a light shine on it. Because, as I said, like it's transformation as well. I don't look at, we look at death of the ego, but it's literally just transformation. Even then when we pass away, that's just a transformation, because we don't know what's on the flip side. So it's just that fear that I think people have, and they reject it and just like, it's not for me. And look, if it's not for you today, it's not for you. Who knows when it will be? It might be tomorrow.
And I think you hit the nail on the head right there when you said fear, because a lot of these individuals who are anxious, some may be anxious because they're scared of failing in whatever it is doing. If that is running a business, they're scared of failing in that business. If that's running a family, a household, they may be scared of failure. And I guess putting a routine in this, it just puts another aspect of I may fail here too. So therefore, that's why it's rejected in a sense. Whereas I think it's a great pillar to help you achieve success.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think as well, people are like, I don't have the time. And it's like, it saves you so much time. It saves you so much time. Because when you're in a better state of mind, then you can be in a better state of mind for the people around you, for your children, for your parents, for your grandparents, for your friends, for your colleagues, whoever it might be, that you can be the best version of you by just having these foundations. And I literally recommend them for everyone.
what does, like, let's say morning routine, right? Everyone's spoken about it. We've heard Oprah Winfrey, we've heard Richard Branson. Everyone's talking about what they do in the morning and how it sets them up for success. So what does like a morning routine look like? Someone who's never had a morning routine.
Oh, okay. Well, for somebody who's never had one, my very first thing is wake up with the sun. And that might be hard for some people because I know people love to have the lay in. And look, I'm still guilty. I will like lay in a little bit, but if you wake up with the sun, so the reason why it's actually optimal to wake up with, at the sunrise or even before, if you can, is because we also have not just timing in terms of our lifespan around the doshas, but each times of the day itself. So if we think about fire, the sun is at its peak at 12 p.m. So we're in the pitta stage between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. And so vata, because it's all around movement and the mind, and ether, like space, then between 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. is when the world is at its most pure consciousness. And that's
beautiful.
I love it. I love that I just love that I know that, and that when I wake up in those hours, like you can go for a walk and there's hardly anyone around. You can hear the birds starting to tweet as they wake and start for the day. And there's just so much more, I don't know. It's a really beautiful, I look out because my window's here, but it's just such a beautiful space to be in.
And that's from 2 until 6.
2 a.m. until 6 a.m. And in the Vedas, they recommend waking up at 3:30 as the optimal time. Now, look, I don't know about, I mean, I'm sure it is, but I don't think I can do that. So I'm not saying anyone should do that. But I usually set my alarm for 30 minutes before the sun rises. So that I just get that little bit of snippet time. So I'll always Google before the day before, and it's like, okay, so the sun's rising at 6 a.m. So I'll wake up at 5:30 tomorrow. And so again, so that's a routine that I have, but I'm not, if I wake up at 5:30 and I'm tired, then I'll sleep until 6 and wake with the sun. Or, and I'm also not being set that I have to wake up at 5:30 every single day. Like I'll wake up at maybe, as the sun starts to rise earlier, I know that time's going to change, but as the sun starts to rise later, that time is going to change. So there's a routine there, but it's not rigid. So that's my very first one anyway. Everyone to wake up with the sun.
I think that's beautiful, that there's routine, but it's not rigid, because a lot of people go, I don't want a routine. I'm not doing it every single day for the rest of my life, because that's what goes into people's heads. You're telling me to wake up 5:30 every single day for the rest of my life. But what you just explained is a wave of flexibility, a wave of change in accordance with nature, in accordance with what's happening out there, that we should reflect that inside. So that's beautiful.
Yeah, definitely. And again, it's that knowledge that I've been able to gain through Ayurveda, and that's allowed me to create that space and self-care and less of that judgment and telling myself I need to do this now and this time and blah, blah, blah. So morning routines, okay, for someone else that's not done it, look, there are a few things that I really recommend. People may not want to do them, but if they become aware of as to why they do them, then maybe that could change their mind. And so for us, when we wake up, living an Ayurvedic lifestyle, we get up and we actually brush our teeth and scrape our tongue. And that's the very first thing that we do, which is sometimes a bit of a problem if you're really busting and go to the toilet.
So you can't even do that before going toilet.
Well, I mean, they recommend within the first 3 minutes, but look, if you're give it a little bit of grace. But, if it's one of the first things that you do when you wake up, at least within 10 minutes of waking up. But the reason why it's so important that we do that is because when we're sleeping, we'll have secretions form on the back of our tongue, and they're actually toxins that the body is trying to eliminate. So we then would have to scrape them off the tongue. If we don't do that, we re-ingest them into the body, and then the toxins continue to grow in the body. So it's really important that we scrape the tongue. And my mum, she's so funny, she's like, I use my toothbrush. I was like, no, mum. And I just tell people, use a spoon if you have nothing else. That's what I did for a long time. I have a copper scraper now, but I just use a spoon. So that's really, really important, because we know now why we do it. We don't just scrape the tongue because we think our tongue wants to be pretty or something. It's like,
get it ready for the day.
Don't know how many people are going to see my tongue, but it's ready. Then you would actually go and have a detox drink. And the reason why we would recommend that as well is we have certain ingredients that we put in that detox drink. And again, if you just want to have a warm glass of water to lubricate the body again and refresh the body, that's okay. We recommend putting in some of the ginger, lemon, and raw honey, and they need to be put in at certain amounts and temperatures. But the reason is because each of the items actually serve a purpose. So the ginger is a scraper, the lemon is a cleanser, and the honey combines everything and actually helps to rid the toxins of the body. Yeah. That's so that, and also just get outside. Like if you can get outside, at least before you go to work, because we're all working from home at the moment, so it's so easy just to wake up, do your thing and get in front of your computer and it's like another day. So it's like make that time just for 30 minutes to just pop outside and go for a walk.
Yeah. Wow. That's absolutely amazing. And I guess if individuals who have anxiety grounded their day by starting with these 3 simple, not time-consuming little things, they will see a difference. They will feel, from my understanding, more grounded. They will feel more set up for today. But not only that, it will help their body also eliminate whatever is happening inside of their body. If there's any toxins, if there's anything that they need to remove and release, and so forth. Yeah,
it's definitely a start. And I mean, you can do the Nasio too. I recommend that. But of course, for people who haven't done this stuff before, I didn't start the Nasio straight away. So I know from my own personal experience that this would be enough for somebody to start their journey.
Yeah. And even like you said, just waking up with the sun. And, you know, I love our circadian rhythm, because I absolutely love knowing that every single organ has a different body clock, that we have a body clock that we run on, that our body loves constant routine, timely things, right? It doesn't like change and it doesn't like moving, things like that. So I love it doesn't work that like that. It doesn't work that well, you know. But I love that you said waking up with the sun, because that is our life force. Like that literally is what gives us energy and what gives us life. And if we have the opportunity to go outside and feel it on our skin the first thing in the morning, what a blessing. You don't need no pill. You don't need anything. You're set right there. Your anxiety is going to drop, especially if you're barefoot, grounded, and the sun's there every morning. It's like, what a life.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. Definitely for me, the sun is something that I gravitate to. And particularly with people that do experience anxiety, you will generally feel quite cold. And they'll often go towards, when I used to say that I wouldn't get in the water unless it was 40 degrees because I was just so cold all the time, and I have hot showers and just gravitate to the sun all the time. And the sun is such a beautiful element to witness as well.
Yeah, you're so right. And it's just like a little hug that you're getting from Mother Nature saying, you've got today, you're all good.
I love that. Absolutely.
So look, what about night, right? We've spoken about morning routines, things that can set us up for anxiety, to help us live that optimal life. What about nighttime? Because, there's so many individuals that say, don't worry about morning routine. It's the night where things start, where you start your next day. So what does the night routine kind of look like?
Yeah, so the night routine is all about, so we're now in the kapha time. And so kapha is 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. And that's all about slowing down. And I know that for people that, you finish work and now you have all these things that you need to do, whether it's pick up the kids and take them to, a training and cook dinner, and it's like, just sit on the lounge, you're like, I'm so exhausted. So the thing is that if we can just implement a few things to support your mental health, and they're not, I personally think they're not big things. So one of them is to eat your dinner before 7 p.m. So because you want to be able to give your digestion enough time to break down the food and to transform the food so that you can have a restful sleep, because people with anxiety will have broken sleep or even can suffer from insomnia. So allowing your body to really break down the food and make sure it's nice. It's like a nice, nourishing, light dinner. So your main meal should always be your lunchtime meal. So just something light. And of course, we'll talk about this. Take a break from the screens. Like It's so obvious. We know that there are those the blue lights. So I'm not good with that sort of stuff, but I know that they're not good for you. And I actually disconnect my phone at least an hour before I fall asleep, and I'll pick up a book instead. I love reading, so why not? And then the other thing is that I love, and my friends tease me for it, is that I have a spiced milk drink before I go to bed. They're like, how old are you? But we put beautiful spices in there that actually help to nourish the mind and calm the mind so that we can have that restful sleep. And then the biggest thing that I found as well, which is one of the reasons as to why I was laughing when I was, overcoming my anxiety disorder, was gratitude journaling. And this is an option to, not an option, a beautiful way as well that we can process these thoughts. Get out that book and write. And I was explaining to a client the other day, they're like, I don't want to journal. I feel good. I feel okay. I don't have anything to talk about. And I was like, sometimes I'll just write, hi, I'm really tired, so I'm going to go to sleep. Good night. And I was like, a few things I'm grateful for, and then close it and then go to sleep. Right? Some days you're going to have stuff come out and some days you're not. And that's okay. But it's the habit. It's the habit of doing it. And be in bed before 10 p.m. because we want to be in bed before the pitta starts, because pitta is all about energy, fire, transformation, right? Does the processing of our food and our thoughts. So if we stay up past 10 p.m., which may not be for everybody, but on a general level, if you stay up past that time, then you kind of get a second wind. Yeah, and that's the pitta. So be in bed before 10 p.m. I
have a struggle with individuals. They always say to me, but Mahela, I'm the most creative and things come out and, I get work done about 11 p.m. till 2 and then I do most of my work then. I'm like, yes, that's exactly why you do most of the work, because it's a second wind. But what should be happening is your brain should be clearing all that stuff instead of you actually doing work, because then when you go to sleep, your brain won't be able to clear as much as it may have. So therefore, you may have these maybe 3, 4, 5 years of being really creative, and then there it goes. Or you can have your whole life of being creative.
Yeah, and it's really true. And that's why I say on a general level, because some people can smoke their entire life and live until 100, right? So this is on a general level. So if you are suffering from anxiety and you know that you can't fall asleep before 10 p.m. and you're really struggling, implement a few of these strategies that I've mentioned today, and then see how you go and see if you can get yourself in bed before that 10 p.m. time. And even if you're just laying there and just doing that breathing to just coax yourself to fall back to sleep. I still have days where I wake up at 3 a.m. and I don't go back to sleep. And I know that that's because there's a collection of thoughts there. I'm really excited about something. And that's okay, because I know that I'm going to probably sleep really well the next night. So I remember that when I was really sick, I would wake up at 3 o'clock and it was dreadful because I didn't understand what was going on. I would judge myself for it. I get really mad at myself. And it's just such a really, self-loathing time that, just create that space for yourself. You're just human.
I love that. Be gentle and be kind on yourself. Awesome. So we've spoken about morning routines. We've spoken about evening routines. I love that. I love how you can implement these simple little things that are not time consuming, and, your anxiety may be able to drop, or you may just be able to deal and understand your anxiety a little bit better. So I absolutely love that you shared that with us. So what happens when someone goes and is not able to stick to them? Like, is it okay if they just wake up and do the tongue scraping, maybe for a month, or just wake up with the sun in the morning, and then at night they're like, I don't want to journal, and all they do is, let's say, put their phone on silent for 1 hour? What happens if they only stick to a few little things? Because us A-type personalities, we just want to do everything. We're like, tomorrow I'm waking up, I'm not peeing, I'm scraping my tongue first, and then I'm going to have that drink. I have to make sure it's got this much this much honey in it, this much this in it, and I'm going to drink it. And then at night, I'm not going to eat. Not eat after 7, and I'm going to do this. I'm going to do everything Jade told me, and then you become even more anxious and stressed out.
Yeah. I've been there. Look, it's just doing what you can. It's that slow and steady wins the race. And it's not about winning, although I really see it as winning or learning. You're never failing. It's winning or learning. And, so for you in this case, it's learning what you're capable of doing, what you can do and what you're willing to do right now, because it all comes down to willpower. And with the food, and the more that we nourish ourselves with warm, nourishing food, as I mentioned earlier, that's actually going to start to help our digestive fire, which is really key to the success of any person, because the digestive fire is so responsible for so many things in our body. It's responsible for everything. It's why toxins or disease is formed. It's because of the way in which our digestive fire is either high or low. So is it overcooking food or is it undercooking food? And the food that's not being processed properly, we're not getting the nutrients out of them. And that food is going to go into our stomach walls, into our tissues, and over time it's going to accumulate. So by even by having warm cooked foods and picking one thing that you really resonated with, and just starting somewhere. It doesn't matter what it is. It's whatever feels correct for you, and just giving yourself that self-care and self-love that you're doing the best that you can right now. And over time that's going to build, because once that becomes a habit, you're like, oh, I think I can add something else on now. For the Abhyanga, I wasn't doing that every day to begin with. I mean, I definitely tried, and I was like, no, I don't like it. And now I do it every day. I mean, if I miss a day, I'm like, oh, that's okay. It's fine. But generally, I do it every day. It's part of my daily routine now. So it's just, slow and steady. Yeah. Take your time. You're doing.
And now the audience is now you provided them with a few little starting points for the morning, a few little starting points for the evening, and implementing these slowly. And exactly like you said, let it become a habit, and don't be hard on yourself. Love yourself and be gentle enough that, it's okay if I don't do this every day. I'm not made to be the same and do everything the same every single day.
Yeah, definitely. And you might have somebody who's been able to pick up routine for years. I do this. I'm like, we only, what is failure? Failure doesn't exist. It's only when we compare ourselves. So just take that back and recognize yourself and say, I'm doing a great job. It's really just being gentle on yourself. I love how you say that. Repeat that, because it's just so important.
Yeah, failure doesn't exist. I bet you some people that are listening are like, whoa, I need to listen to all of this again. I love that. Look, we're coming to the end of this absolutely amazing podcast. And I mean, we can keep talking on about anxiety and routine, but I guess we've got the main point across that, anxiety is normal to an extent, and it looks different for every individual. And things like grounding yourself, like we mentioned, the tree, having the roots, no matter what wind or what comes at you, you're able to withstand it. And having these routines in place every day help you withstand these uncertainties that we have around in our lives at the moment. So before we close up and say goodbye, Jade, I wanted to know what's your best kept natural health hack that you've been doing for a while now, and that's just given you that extra edge and made you feel amazing?
Gosh, I mean, natural health hack. I honestly, I know it's going to sound ridiculous, but that nausea.
I was going to say that.
Honestly, and to be honest, when I first started doing it, I hated it. Again, I tried to do it for 2 weeks and then I stopped and I was like, I just can't do it. And then over time, again, when I was able to implement other routines, I was like, okay, I'm going to bring that back because I know it's important. But it's just, as I explained, what it's responsible for, what it lubricates, what it does, and how it supports your endocrine system. I mean, I've been, as I said, doing it for over 6 months now, every single day, and I can feel it's making such a difference in my mental health, my physical health, just in life in general. Yeah, so definitely the nausea. So
wonderful. Thanks for sharing that with us. Yeah, thanks for sharing that with us. I absolutely love it. What I'll do is in the show notes, I'll add your website, and for individuals to be able to jump on and do that quiz so they can get a better understanding of what dosha they may be, because it allows you to reflect and understand yourself a little bit more. And then you do that and you listen to the podcast again, you're like, oh, that sounds like me. That's so me. Or no, that's not me. So I absolutely
let me know.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you want to share with the audience before we close up for today?
I will just actually share that with every dosha, there is a sense organ, and the sense organ for Vata is touch. And so I'm somebody who very much I'm a hugger. So if you know somebody that's going through anxiety, and it's safe, obviously, because we've been in a pandemic, but just be there and give somebody a hug, because I think it's one of the most beautiful things you can do for somebody.
That's beautiful. So what are the other ones? What are the other senses? You got me intrigued now.
Well, actually, it's so interesting because I was talking about this to like another colleague, and I was like, "What's the kapha one?" Because we couldn't pinpoint what that was, but the pitta one are the eyes, and they're so important because it's all about seeing your path, all about seeing the path ahead of you. Yeah,
which I thought was so really interesting. Yeah, it's so interesting. Yeah. I love all these ancient.
But I'll come back to you on the kapha one because we're still deciphering that one.
You're still figuring that one out. All right, well, get back to me when you figure it out.
Yeah, I will.
Awesome. Well, Jade, thank you so much for being on a Natural Health podcast. I really appreciate your time and all your knowledge that you shared with us about anxiety and about routine, and giving us a little bit of an insight about the doshas. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thanks so much, Mila.
Thank you for joining us at the Natural Health podcast. And remember, the missing link between success and failure is your health. Content and information provided here is opinion of Mahela Raguse and is for information purposes only and does not constitute medical advice. It is not intended to provide medical advice or take the place of medical advice or any current treatment you're undertaking. Consult your own medical professionals for any medical issues that you may be having. This entire disclaimer also applies to any guests or contributors to the Natural Health podcast. It is advised that you consult your doctor or healthcare professional in relation to any health concerns you may be having. Mahela Raguse does not take responsibility for any health consequences which occur from a person listening, viewing, or reading this content. And in the circumstances shall the Natural Podcast, Mahela Raguse, any guests or contributors to the Natural Podcast, or any employees, associates, or affiliates of Mahela Raguse be responsible for damages arising from the information provided on the Natural Podcast. By listening to this podcast, you agree not to use this podcast as medical advice to treat any medical conditions in either yourself or others. Please note, if you're taking prescription, do not stop your medication or start a new protocol, including but not limited to supplements, diet, lifestyle changes without consulting your doctor or healthcare professional. If you or any person has a medical concern, you should consult with your healthcare provider or seek other professional medical advice. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something that you have read or heard on the Natural Podcast or in any linked materials. If you think you may have a medical emergency, call your doctor or emergency services immediately. Neither Mahela Raguse nor the publisher of this content takes responsibility for the possible health consequences of any person or persons reading or listening or following the information in the educational content.